in government and organizations for social good. As you all know, some of you that have been following us, last week we had guests, Chief John Nyangodo, we had Pa Ayo Adebanjo, an elder statesman and a Fanifere leader. Also had Beatrice Pogo, who incidentally couldn't join, Yinka Odumakin, Ankyo Briggs, and Governor Olusegun Mimiko. The previous week, we rubbed mind with Alhaji Tanko Yakasai and Adamu Gaba. And also, in the previous week, we had Professor Chukwuma Soludo when we discussed COVID-19, oil price crash, and its likely implication for Nigeria. Today, we have in our midst Professor Awal Yadudu, a professor of law and the current Vice Chancellor of the Federal University, Benin Kebbi State. Dr. Sam Amadi, the former chairman of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, and he is currently a senior lecturer and head of department at the Bayes University. The third guest today is Professor Chidi Odinkanu, Senior Team Manager for the African Program and Open Society Justice Initiative. He is also a Nigerian human rights activist. He's a lawyer, a professor, and a writer. For the conversation this evening, I'm going to be your host, Mazi Tochukwu Ezoke, and the moderator remains Daniel Elumba. Now, this evening, people, there is going to be a house rule. Everyone will be placed on mute. Please, we beg you, do not unmute yourself. Please dress appropriately. If you must turn on your camera, make sure you are properly dressed. And also be mindful of your background. Questions will be taken from those who have their cameras on. That means if you don't have your camera on, and if you raise your hands, which we do virtually, we will lower your hands if your hands are raised and you do not have your camera on. That is the house rule this evening. I would want to confirm once more that we have Dr. Sam Amadi here. If we have him, have you, Dan, are you able to confirm that Sam Amadi is right now with us? And do we have, I have here Chido Numa, and can we confirm that we have Professor Chido Dinkalo as well?
Chido Dinkalo said he will be joining, he had a meeting overrunning 7 p.m., but he will join on soon. But I think we have Barrister Mahmoud Abdul with us now.
Okay, so in that case, once more, we will be kicking off with Barrister Mahmoud Abdul. Now, Barrister Mahmoud Abdul, as some of you might know, on Twitter, we profoundly, and we call him the Oracle. The Oracle, as I call you on Twitter, can you please make your presentation this evening?
Thank you, Mazi. Thank you, Mazi Zoke and Daniel Lomba for inviting me to your August virtual conversation. I'm pleased to be here. The issues that you have outlined for conversation this evening are topical. They go to the root of our collective existence as a people and also as a nation. For Nigerians out there who are gradually easing out of the lockdown that we've been in since mid-March, it's been a traumatic time for them, 6-7 weeks, even more than that for most. And a lot of things have happened in the past 8 weeks that we have had this lockdown and partial lockdown. the poverty that confront our people has become more deepening, and they become stark and starker during the course of the lockdown. We have experienced conflicts between the center and the peripheral states. If you remember, there was a running battle on the pages of our papers and on social media, a battle between the governor of Rivers State and the Minister of Aviation. At one level, the conflict highlighted some of the issues that we do raise that go at the heart of restructuring of our country. And these 8 weeks or so have also shown the unpreparedness, or if you like state, some of us, people, quarters of governance, kept shouting that we are ready, and we've seen how ready that they are. Just last week, pictures surfaced on social media of the isolation center in Kano State, 600 beds center, which turned out to be an empty sport hall. These things highlight some of the problems we are having, and it also raises the fundamental question. Though we recognize the fact that health is an item under the concurrent list, but it also highlights some of the conflict that we have experienced between the states, and the center. I would ask, you are dealing with a public health issue. Should we have an NCDC that is a national institution run the show without the states having input, into the whole question of public health crisis that we're having? Is it possible that for once we can restructure our country, let states deal with issues as they affect them without the overbearing and over-aching influence, of the center? We have seen these conflicts play out again and again. But COVID-19 has really exposed the underbelly of the Nigerian state, that over 90 million Nigerians live in poverty, that our state is poor, is incapable of taking care of its citizens. And we see countries of the world, doing all sorts of, social programs to uplift their citizens during the pendency of the law. But in Nigeria, with Minister of Affairs, keep telling Nigerians they have spent billions, millions of naira in taking care of children that are out of school. COVID-19 also exposes corruption of the nation state. And these are fundamental questions I think we should address as the evening pans out.
Thank you very much for that quick submission. So we want to make sure that we have the next speaker. Dan, are we confirming?
Yes, I think
are you there?
Yes, I am. I think at some point your connection was a little bit frozen, but that's fine. I think you're back on. So Dan, are you confirming the next speaker, please?
Yes, we have. I think we have Dr. Samamadi here. But before we go on to Dr. Samamadi, Barrister Mahmood has given a very succinct perspective. When we invite speakers, we are inviting them for a purpose. We don't just go out to get people to come in and speak to us. And when we invited you, there are questions we need you to highlight for us, please. In our previous conversation, some of the speakers highlighted problem of the 2014 Constitutional Conference that was organized by President Goodluck Jonathan. And I understand you attended that 2014 Constitutional Conference. Am I correct, sir?
Absolutely.
Very good. Now, the question is, if Goodluck Jonathan was sincere in organizing that conference, why didn't he implement it before he leaves? Why didn't Goodluck Jonathan implement the conference before he left office? That's basically my first question to you, please.
Right. I'm not Dr. Jonathan Goodluck. I only participated as one of the 19 delegates that represented the Nigerian civil society from Edo State and the south of Nigeria. I think the political calendar was not in favor of Jonathan Goodluck. Don't forget that it was a late comeback to this whole argument of convocation of sovereign national conference that dovetailed into a national conference. And when he inaugurated the conference in February 2014, it was supposed to be a 3-month conference. Don't forget that we ran into all sorts of problems, and I think the conference was extended by 1 month. And the final report of the conference was not presented till August 2014. And in September, to be fair to President Jonathan, he inaugurated the Adoki Mohammed Committee to look at the propositions, resolutions, and recommendations of the National Conference. Don't forget that the resolutions were divided into 3. You had the resolutions that dealt with the constitutional matters. We also had resolutions that dealt with, judicial matters, and we also had resolutions that dealt with, policy matters. And it was the responsibility of the Adoki Committee to sieve through the resolution of the National Conference. And the Adoki Committee didn't submit its report till late October 2014. By October 2014, INEC had signaled what I describe as the open sesame for electoral campaigns that year. So the electoral and political calendar got President Jonathan caught up. He could not implement it. But it's not a defense for Jonathan. There were also the resolutions of the National Conference. They were basically policy resolutions that I thought he ought to have implemented before he left office. He didn't. But if government is a continuum, and I emphasize this point, there would have been no need for this government to have jettisoned the whole 950-page report of the National Conference. Perhaps, at least to give kudos to the government, they have done things very clever. The National Waterways Bill that was passed by the 8th National Assembly in 2016-2017 was a copy and paste resolution of the National Conference. In the past 3 years, we have seen policy positions of this government. I can't remember quite a lot now, that this government has executed that are directly policy resolutions, constitutional resolutions of the National Conference. The government said it was going to run its own program along the line of resolutions of the National Conference. The Ken Namani committee headed by, as I speak to you, reports of both committees, I've not seen the light of the day. But let me correct myself here. The Indamani committee was not strict to sensu in respect of reviewing the resolutions of the National Conference. It was in respect of looking at ways that we can reform the present electoral system. So if we add the electoral system, the resolution on the electoral system as part of the agitation for the structure of the National Conference, my argument would be that the government has fared very poorly. And thankfully, today is tonight, we are commemorating 5 years anniversary of this podcast.
Okay, we thank you very much for this exposition. I'm sure other people will also have to have questions to ask you as time goes on. But let's move ahead and let's invite our next speaker, and then when more questions come in, I'm sure we'll have more to say. Thankfully, we now have Dr. Sama Madi in the house. If Dr. Sama Madi is ready to make his presentation, sir.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry I came late. I had to go. Can I go ahead? Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, as a teacher now, I had to go to faculty to rectify students' exam at the schools. I just came in late to join. So pardon me, I don't know exactly who has spoken. But is there any particular direction you want me to take, or I should just go on generally. I listened to Mahmoud, some part of Mahmoud's presentation.
Yeah,
Is there any particular area?
Yeah, I'm sure we sent you a topic, sir. The topic.
I know. Okay, I just want to know that whether I want me to follow with that topic or
yes, please. Yes, that topic, please. We want you to follow that.
Okay,
topic.
because okay, I want to make sure. Okay, no problem. First, let me apologize for not being able to be here on time, as I already indicated. We're looking at the issue of coronavirus pandemic and good governance, and also restructuring and 1999 constitution. Let me start straight by where Mahmoud stopped as regards the the Constitutional Conference 2014. I'm sure Prof will say more about that. But the Constitutional Conference is not an isolated incident, meaning that the question around the national question. I was a young person, as a young lad with Ghana with me, when Akaba tried to carry out the first Constitutional Conference in Lagos then, and so many civil societies. I was active there. And the question of national question, even as Mahmoud was my president when we announced, when we had our academic reform program and the emergency of education, the national question has also been what we had been kind of concerned about as the way to take that forward. Now, let me say that Nigeria, the problem with Nigeria, 3 fundamental crises are identified in a paper I did at the Kaduna State University. I call them the 3 fundamental crises. One is what I call the nationality crisis or citizenship crisis. The idea is that, like Professor Benedict argued, says a state is an imaginary social imagination. We create, there are no perfect nations. So a nation is constituted through what they call social imagination. So you create a state. But what is clear is that all successful states have had some common features. First is the idea of a modern concept of citizenship. If you look at our constitution, that's my first quarter. Our constitution creates the concept of citizenship around the concept of those who are indigenous to Nigeria. Maybe it was pragmatic to talk about ethnic groups indigenous to Nigeria, but it has fostered, in my view, a concept of citizenship that is ethnicized. Across West Africa and Africa, we've seen the issue around nationality, citizenship, and indigeneship being a crisis. So the constitution, in my view, fails to construct a national civic citizenship, a citizenship defined by legal ties towards territory, whether by assimilation, whether by naturalization, or other forms. Again, in 1959, Nigeria prior to independence, there's been this big debate. I'm happy Dr. Yadudu is here today, Professor Yadudu. The debate around religion and state is critical in Nigeria. I took the view, and I've written several journal articles on that, that the Nigeria original sin was to create, instead of a modern secular, I'm going to come back to that word, it's very problematic, but modern secular state, democratic secular state, we created by default or by design a new feudal theocratic state or religious state. Now there's a debate around what does Section 10 say. Some scholars have argued that Section 10 does not make Nigeria a secular state. And they see secularity in the context of maybe godless, anti-religious state. But my view has been that Section 10 caused a disruption and therefore creates a new Nigerian state around the concept of religious neutrality. So the Nigerian problem has been a problem of how do we manage religious plurality and diversity. And for me, the effort to manage it through what I call accommodation approach, equality. So Christian Muslims, you provide for Christian Muslims, who has failed and will fail. Whether it's in terms of curriculum, fight over which religion is more privileged. So a Nigerian state has a problem of first defining who is a Nigerian, citizenship, civic rights. 2, how will Nigeria with the incommensurable fact of diversity, religious, metaphysical, philosophical. Today, we saw a Nigerian atheist who was arrested somewhere in Kaduna and taken to Kano for blaspheming, allegedly, the Holy Prophet. So if you look at Nigerian legal history, you see the oddities of how religion and politics and religion has mixed in a way that has threatened both national unity, stability, and development. I was a lawyer who took Zamfara state government to court in 2000 before I traveled abroad for studies. And I sued on behalf of Kurilos, Human Rights Law Services. At Zamfara High Court, our case was struck out because they said we are Lagosians, human rights activists, we're neither Muslims nor Zamfarians. We brought a case in the name of Emma Shehuden, who is a native Zamfaran Christian, went to High Court, went to court appeal before I left. So we're the first people to challenge in 2000 the concept of a Nigerian state assembly making a criminal public law in the name of religion. The democratic argument is that every assembly has a right to make laws. So if they are dominated more by a particular philosophical or religious sect, they can make law. But the argument you make is that's the argument dating to liberal scholars like John Ross and others. And one basis is one who got it very well. That once you make law, religious law, you are giving force of state to enforce a concept of the good that is particular to a particular religion. So the 10 or 12 northern states that enacted the Sharia criminal code arguably have disrupted the secular democratic character of the Nigerian state, or at least created a conflict and confusion as to whether those states are in themselves Muslim states within the Nigerian state. And my view is that a modern democratic state should have one linkage between citizen and law. I'm not against legal pluralism, but it seems to me that some confusion when the same state can have multiple legal relationships. So that's the second crisis of the Nigerian state. The first one was a crisis of citizenship. Who's a Nigerian? Are we going to create a Nigerian based on civic connection to the state, and therefore with a whole bundle of rights that everybody share as a civic person, and therefore define their ownership not based on appeal to ethnic or religious elements or incidents, but to legal civic rights, what we call democratic citizenship. Second, I said religion and state. Are you going to create a Nigeria that is modern secular democratic, or that is neo-feudal theocratic, in which case religious accommodation and struggle for religion becomes the order. Struggle between religion for order, for supremacy becomes the order. So the third crisis, and they're all linked together, for me in the constitution, is the crisis of what I call the productivity crisis. Now the productivity crisis is a crisis that says, look, Nigerian state focuses on promoting prerogatives and privileges. Some scholars have talked about prebendalism, neo-patrimonial states, which is a state that is in the process of dispensing privileges, prebend in the days of the Catholic Empire, Roman Empire, and the power of the ecclesiastics to dispense privileges called prebend. Now, what does that mean practically? It means that the design of our political economy is not based on production, but rather on consumption and sharing. You can call it rentier states. So the Constitution of Nigeria provides some kind of justification for a state that focuses more on privilege given to people based on privilege. So oil blocks are shared, which is a modern economic oddity, that a country will award oil blocks to persons, not necessarily as a form of private-public partnership based on proposals and bids that are evaluated based on competence or finance, other objective criteria, but based on some connection, network, whether to the president. The Nigerian richest and African richest woman is richest because she has an opportunistic net connection to a Nigerian president. Today, projects are not cited or developed based on cost-benefit analysis. The power sector has crisis today because we insisted on putting power plants not where we have gas and therefore economize on cost, but put it in places where the pot is determined. So primarily that's a productivity crisis. It affects livelihood, it affects our production, it affects these conflicts that the nationality question, religious question, the productivity crisis reinforces those crises. Now, so look at the Nigerian constitution, therefore. I'm not a supporter of continuous revision of constitutions. In fact, the theory from political scientists is that the most stable constitutions and the most stable politics are those constitutions that have not been altered. Because when you amend constitution too frequently, they create a self-fulfilling process, a subject of political contestation. Anybody who loses in the electoral process takes the constitution. When you win, you change the constitution. Then the constitution becomes a political pie to fight for the next election. So when you win again, you change. So oftentimes, if you look at countries all over the world that are doing a lot of constitutional amendments, they are unstable. If you look at enduring democracies, they have had old constitutions. So all these constitutional amendments are not good. But I subscribe to changing the fundamentals of constitution either through a national conference or some kind of way that we go back to do what I call, let's first reconceptualize the Nigerian state. Today, the Daily Telegraph summed up today, the Telegraph of London, about Buhari's 5 years, and says Nigeria is nearing state failure. Every indicator of failure is there, whether in terms of terrorism, in terms of violence, banditry, in terms of criminality, kidnapping, lawlessness, several ungoverned territories. But they are built around a constitutional dissonance. And that constitutional dissonance is not basically about devolution, about exclusive and concurrent. Those things can be suboptimal. The real crisis of the Nigerian constitutional state is a crisis of identification. In strategy, we call it IDEM. What's Nigeria for? Who is a Nigerian? How do you define Nigerians' relationship to themselves? The feudal, I call it neo-feudal, the feudal elements that Nigeria is still run as if is an agglomeration of ethnic religious interests, not as a transformed entity that represents before law and public policy as one civic space. If we don't create a Nigeria with a one civic space, which is defined by first, democratic citizenship, the right of every Nigerian to be a citizen of Nigeria everywhere, satisfying basic legal requirements. 2, the right of every Nigerian, the socio-economic rights, meaning citizenship has an economic component, meaning that resources should go to address the needs of citizens. So the clamor to have Section Chapter 2, made enforceable, flows from democratic citizenship. The third issue is that Nigeria will develop a way to manage religion, which will make it private, free. Everybody can right to freedom of religion, but private. The state will pull away from supporting and getting involved in religious activity of any dimension. I'm not talking about Nigeria has been Islamized or Christianized. The Nigerian state should opt out of religion and allow religion to be a marketplace activity. Call it equality, or let's talk about call it neutrality, because when we say a secular state, it connotes the idea of a godless or anti-religious state. Neutral, not bothered about people, as long as he said publicly acceptable rules, people can go and worship their God in their own way. That will free these ethno-religious conflicts, squabble, competition to control the Nigerian state, because there is merit, there is value, there is incentive to control the state, to use it to advance ethnic or religious agenda. And the last I talked about is the productivity. That will involve what I call restructuring. I like to follow the European notion of subsidiarity, which is that problems should be solved at the lowest level, and therefore resources should go to the lowest level. So if people are dealing with erosion, it should be solved by the local government or county council or state. So for me, devolution or restructuring is to create a functional state based on democratizing local sphere of governance. So give back to local government when I was going to run for governor, I said I was going to give 100% of local allocation to local governments. And we're going to set up a expanded ESCO, elected town unions, going back to community democracy. So it's not about, I'm not in support of ethnic state federalism, meaning you carve out this for the Hausa Fulanis, or Hausa or Fulani or BPO or Ijo or Igbo. No, I'm in support of devolving power, restructuring, so that local people, however defined, Kano will deal with Kano issues with resources that Kano can create. Therefore, we can unleash the dynamics, the energy of Nigerian people. Even when we had our regional government, it made a lot of sense because we were regions and then became nation. Now, every region was very economically productive. Aton Lewis, who got Nobel in 1964, so argued in his book, he argued thoroughly against the centralization. Says, let's go back to federalism where regions can deal with regional problems. So I think that regionalization is what I want to have, but more important could be a system where we restructure and give back power, resources to the lowest unit, not to the people. So my view on restructuring is that I'm not hung up on whether it's regional or ethnically based, but all I want is a system that allows local problems to be solved at a local level and allows resources to flow so that incentive will be in production rather than sharing, so that even states, individuals should own the oil themselves, the land, and they should pay royalties. We don't have to say, oh, we're going to give all the oil to Niger Delta, and then the north or the east will lose. No, it's a question of going back to create incentive for production and giving people a sense of ownership. Finally, for me, the issue around restructuring in Nigeria is being seen as issue of competitive politics again. So people perhaps think that, oh, if we restructure, a particular zone will be much more prosperous, advantage than others. So those who have the votes, the human power, the majority, try to trump that move. And so if you go to National Assembly today, likely it will fail. And so if you go to Constitutional Conference, likely it will succeed because of maybe parity of representation, or maybe the other groups have more bargaining power. And so people are kind of trumping each other on political terrain because we have defined it in loser-winner time. But if we design it in a configured Nigeria, not around ethnic identity, a modern state. You see, let me end with this. In 1958, the real question was, before Williams Commission, should we deal with the minority question in Nigeria through two processes? One, a confederal system, ethnic identity, where each group goes have ethnic identity, or through fundamental human rights. And that commission said the best way is to create a fundamental human right, which will be a counter-majoritarian structure to the ethnic group, as well as representation for minorities, so that you are creating political minorities. So they settled Nigerian position not in carving out ethnic identities and creating a confederal arrangement. They resolve Nigerian crisis on the basis of a bundle of rights that applies to all Nigerians, and then the right of participation for all Nigerian or religious groups. That still provides the basis for which we can resolve the constitutional crisis. That is, we need to make a choice between a neo-feudal, and I use the word advantage. The feudal system is and we see across Nigeria, bring in play Mahmoud Mamdani's classic book, Seasonal State, where the argument that all across Africa, late colonization, where instead of democratizing the local area, colonial centralized dictatorship. And is that is why we are still having communal conflict. Because in the locale, there's no democracy. One ethnic group is imposed above other because we want to see who is the major ethnic group in this area. So either the Igbos dominating the non-Igbo in the southeast, or is the Yorubas dominating, or the Fulani Hausas dominating the non-Fulani Hausas in the north. So my view is that, look, Nigeria has a great prospect. It was a failure of the Nigerian state that tomorrow we'll be doing Biafra anniversary of the war, the first of the war. It was a failure of Nigeria that created, and it's a failure of Nigeria that's creating the same aspiration for several Biafras. We can decide to create a modern democratic and secular or religiously neutral. 2, totally democratic in the sense that we have no place for any essence of authority that is not derived from democratic mandate. That is the lens in which I look at the Constitution. So these 3 areas are the areas I would take away. I would take reference to religion in the Constitution out. No religious courts, whether it's Sharia Court of Appeal or Sharia High Court, no religious court, all those courts should operate at the level of personal law as well before. There should be no criminal religious law, because a criminal religious law imports the use of coercive state power to prefer or to support a conception of the good, in this case, religious. That detracts from the sense of democracy. And again, we should free our economy to run on the basis of production. People should earn what they kill, so that, and then you provide for those who have the accident of misfortune, like social democratic states in the Scandinavia. You provide for everybody equality, equal access, equal opportunity, and then you provide for those who will have the misfortune of either accident, misfortune of failure, of poverty, but not a state that is run on privilege, either of class or of ethnic group or religious group. All forms of such classism betrays creates unproductive economy. And for me, these are the central question of Nigeria. We can be a great nation, united as Nigeria. I am more like a modern Zikist. I want a Nigeria that's defined basically by civic ties to the geopolitics. It doesn't matter other individual identities we carry, but the state sees us just as Nigerian citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Madi, for such a very great elucidation. I see some people are raising up their hand to ask questions, but please, I will ask you to please wait for now. Let's listen to Professor Awali Yadudu, who is already here with us. He's a very familiar name. I'm not sure he needs introduction, but if I must introduce him, Professor Yadudu served as Dean of the Faculty of Law, Bayero University in 2016, became Vice Chancellor of the Federal University, Benin, Kebbi State. Professor Yadudu served as the legal advisor to the late head of state, General Sani Abacha. He also served as the Deputy Chairman of National Conference Standing Committee on Law, Judiciary, and Human Rights. So, ladies and gentlemen in the House, let's give the floor to Professor Awali Yadudu.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and as I had allotted you, I have a very short leash. I fasted today. I just had to join because I gave my words that I will join you. Now, I've listened to the elucidation of the gentleman who has just spoken, and I don't know where to start, actually. First of all, I think in your introduction, you mentioned that I was appointed Vice Chancellor of Benin Kebbi. Well, I was appointed, but I didn't take up appointment, and the mistake keeps being repeated. I'm not a Vice Chancellor of any university. And I was Dean over 30 years ago in Bayero University, where I am at the moment. Now, let me just speak in snippets, so to speak. First of all, I think if I may take an issue or two from the presentation just been made. One, I think we do not, we do have in our constitutional system, in our legal system, a recognition for religious laws, and this does not start or end with Islamic law. Bigamy is a crime, even if not enforced, and it's in our statute book. There are other crimes which have derived their origin from Christianity, as some have also derived their origin from Islam, and also some from customary practices. This is one thing I would like to say. Secondly, I don't know what to make of the position that the gentleman has taken on Section 10, whether it recognizes Nigeria as a secular state or multi-religious or something else. I think it says what it says. Neither the state nor the federal government shall adopt a religion as a state religion. And it's so nebulous. Unfortunately, it has not received the necessary judicial scrutiny and interpretation to give us an idea as to what the framers actually meant when they couched the section the way they couched it. There was a feeble attempt in '79 to challenge the section in Lagos by the Catholic Church. It didn't go far. And I was amazed to hear Mr. Sam said that they took the issue up in Zamfara, up to Court of Appeal. I'm not aware about what suit that is and what the decision was. If it has gone up to Court of Appeal, I would imagine there was a ruling one way or another at the lower court, and I would be interested to know what the issues were and what the decision of the lower court had been. Now, the third thing I'd like to raise is regarding so really the issue is that you have a constitutional provision couched in the language it has been couched to take into account whatever those who designed it thought was on the ground. But of course, as I said, it has not been subjected to judicial scrutiny to come to a decision one way or another. The third point I wanted to make, again, because I listened to his presentation, was that he would not subscribe to too frequent an amendment to the Constitution, because it's only where politics are unstable that you have too many changes. You'll be surprised. I'm sure he should know that the U.S. Constitution suffered so very many amendments at its takeoff, which have been numbered, and I think the last count is I think number 22. And of course, so maybe the system at that stage was also unstable, but they went through the necessary amendments to plug things and to flesh things up and to give direction in the manner that they wanted. So I don't think it is fear of running away from political instability that will encourage one not to subject to the Constitution for an amendment or some adjustment here or there. Now, let me just say 2 or 3 things just by way of my own independent observations, apart from what I have said about the presentation made. The mistake and has been continuously made that this Constitution, the 1999 Constitution, is a military imposition, and we should have nothing to do with it. And we are doomed to failure if we do not throw it into the ditch. My take on the 1999 Constitution is that really it is a constitution that has only updated the 1979 Constitution. You might say that also the 1979 Constitution itself was an imposition of the military. But I think the basic structure of the 1999 Constitution is a continuation of the 1954, 1960, 1963 Constitution, which is that you have a chapter on judiciary, which essentially has remained what it is. You have a chapter on fundamental rights, which, as far as I can tell, also has only been improved upon. You have chapters that define and prescribe the powers of state, of the executive, the judiciary, the legislature, only that this is an executive system and not a parliamentary system. And so if you look, and of course, again, you have a constitution that has distribution, legislative list that is distributed between the exclusive and the concurrent. What in these features is uniquely an imposition of either 79 or of 99? It is a continuation of what we have gone through. It is not a perfect document. It can be vastly improved. There is much in it that can be tweaked, even overthrown. But I think it is a fallacy to keep saying that this is an imposition and that we would go no further if we do not jettison it. Associated to this point is the silly case that is being made that this constitution is authored by my humble self. I will accept the notoriety. I will accept also the honor, if you consider an honor, that I authored the Constitution. But of course, the 1979 Constitution came about as a result of a deliberative process which was chaired by late Justice Niki Toby, and a report produced, and the military adopted and promulgated a constitution which has the features I have just described. The final point I'd like to make I think by reference to restructuring is that since there are so many checks on what people mean by restructuring, and if you want to discuss it in relation to the Constitution, stop beating about the bush. The existing legal order is the 1999 Constitution. It has ways and means and provision for changing it, including even entirely overturning it. Now, whether we are able to develop enough political consensus and will or power to do so is another thing. So to me, I don't see any problem about restructuring. Whether you want to combine the whole of Southwest to become a region again, or whether you want to combine the 6 zones to become the political entities making up the federation, or what if you want to do a confederal system, whatever it is you want to do, I think you can only work within the existing legal order, and you have no other basis for changing things except in accordance with the existing legal order. Now, of course, I know the answer to that is that, of course, it is difficult to achieve and what have you. But you see, wherever you go, when constitutions are changed, when societies change, they make the most of what they have. And of course, you can change it by a revolution if you can afford it. Obviously, you can throw it out and you can enthrone whatever beautiful ideas you would want to enthrone, by not necessarily by reference to the constitutional provision. So my take really is on those issues for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for that wonderful insight. Before we get to the next person that is going to speak, that is on this matter, You alluded to the fact that, erroneously, people have gifted you with the 1999 Constitution, and you said is an honor you would gladly accept. Now, please, may I ask, I mean, you've clearly said you did not author the 1999 Constitution. My question to you directly will be, what is then your role as it concerns the 1999 Constitution, sir?
All right. Well, I can see, I was reading through the charts that there are still some people who are so hell bent on christening it that I do the Constitution. As I said, I accept it. Now, my role, as I said, you remember in 1994 there was a constitutional conference which led to the emergence of what was popularly referred to as the Abacha Constitution of 1995, but which was never promulgated and actually was thrown out. But when General Abacha died and General Abdul Salam took over, he retained me as a legal advisor to him. And within that 1 year that he was in office, the need was felt, and he didn't want to stay longer than 11 months that he has said he wanted to be. A constitutional debating committee was established, chaired by late Justice Nikki Toby. I remember a number of names that were on that committee. I was one of them. I can't remember the names of all others who are on that, but there are 49 members. Now, that committee went around and sought the views of Nigerians. At the end of the day, it reported that there was an overwhelming support for a return to the 1979 Constitution, an overwhelming support for the return to the 1979 Constitution with necessary amendments. So really, what the PRC did, so you're asking what my role is. I had no role in writing anything. I was only part of the committee chaired by Justice Nikki Toby, which submitted a report to the PRC, which adopted its recommendation that we go back to 1979 Constitution. And the structure I laid out to you actually is 1979 Constitution with necessary amendments. Necessary amendments such as the fact that in 79 we had 21 states or maybe 19 states. In 1990 we had 36. We didn't have NJC. In 79, it was introduced Nigeria Judicial Commission. But the straight answer is that it will be silly of anyone to say that I wrote that Constitution. In any event, as I said, that Constitution is reflective of the basic structure I outlined. Did I author chapter 4? Did I author chapter the section dealing on judicial and executive powers? Did I author all those other sections? What exactly in 1979 did I author that is new? Maybe I will even take credit for introducing not less than 13% that is given on derivation, which is one of the few things, new things in the 1999 Constitution. So that's your answer, my friend.
Okay, thank you very much. Here, I think it's been cleared, and I want all the press in this room, in this conference this evening, to take note. I think the professor has cleared this now that erroneously had the report. I mean, I've read that report myself online, so now he's cleared the air. Hopefully, after this conference, that's not going to be attributed to him anymore. So Daniel, over to you. Do we need to bring in now Professor Chidodin Kalu before we start taking questions?
Please, if you will oblige me, the Professor Yadude has indicated that he will only stay briefly. So if I'll ask Professor Adenkale if he's here to wait to tarry a while, let's see some questions, whether some people will like to ask Professor Yadude some questions before he leaves.
Okay, that's fine. Are there questions directly being directed to the professor before he takes his leave?
Yes, there is a question someone sent in the chat room. He says something in the form of what the professor thinks are the weaknesses of the 1999 Constitution. What defects would he like to be corrected in the 1999 Constitution?
Prof, over to you, sir. You had that.
Well, I'm not a political actor. I see a few problems with if you give me the opportunity, I would want to see the amendment process a bit more relaxed. In particular, the role given to the presidential assent. To me, if you go through the process of amending the Constitution, the National Assembly does it, the public hearing takes place, the amendment goes to States House of Assemblies, which are adopted by 2/3 support, and then it comes back, and then it goes to Mr. President, and by a stroke of the pen, the President strikes it down. I think that is wrong, and it is not in the spirit of a presidential system that even in the US, amending the Constitution should not give a veto power to Mr. President. I would like to see that changed. I would also want to see there is a problematic area of the redistribution, devolution of powers. We've been battling with how do we devolve more powers from the federation to the states. Now, I think in the last few exercises, the one I have been involved in, for example, in 2014 and 2005, and also in previous exercises, the attempt was made to devolve a few more powers to the states. Now, unfortunately, if you are running two lists, the concurrent and the exclusive list, even if you give states powers under concurrent list, the federation can cover the field, and therefore when the federation legislates in those areas, it still takes away the power of the states to do so. I think there is a lot of areas that needs to be amended also to deal with electoral inertia that we have, the electoral reform. There have been recommendations that the INEC made, and I think Justice Ways Committee made, and I think if we can look at those. Now, as I said, maybe that is my 2 pence in terms of what are the areas of the constitutional amendment. It is tempting for some to want to bring some clarity to Section 10. I think in my view, it is best left in the nebulous language. If we want clarity, it is best that we test that through the judicial process and not by introducing any new language. You may introduce language, any language you introduce subject to interpretation, and therefore you cannot solve that section by expanding or contracting the language.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. There is another question here by Collins Okpara. He says, Professor, what is your position on the exclusive list and the concurrent list?
Oh, I just said my views on it. It's just that I wish in the 1960 constitutional amendment, I think there was some implicit language that there was a residual list. Now, I would like to see some tinkering done, some thinking put into creating more explicitly anything not listed in the concurrent or the exclusive list belong to the residual list. And we can reduce the concurrent list so that if you create an explicit in the sense that anything which is not in the either of the lists belongs to the residual list, meaning belongs to the states all the local governments. I think that may give more room for localities to legislate, to exercise powers, and to release the kind of energy that some had alluded to. So that's my idea. Create a third list, reduce the two lists, implicitly create, or rather explicitly create a residual list that belongs to states and local governments.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Another question from Gozi Williams. He says, do you favor introducing a constitutional court that will be separate from the current constitutional, from the current court?
Yeah, I think both in 2014 and also in 1995, there was a proposal for the establishment of the constitutional court. My problem with constitutional court is that, one, you'll be creating one court too many. It is the same thing as my objection to creating electoral offenses tribunal. The other thing is that there is going to be a problem in the jurisdiction because what kind of jurisdiction would you be given to it that you take away from the existing courts? And how would the existing courts also resort or react to that? Because it has happened, don't forget, in 1976, when the Federal Revenue Court was established, the present Federal High Court, there was so much contestation between the state high courts and the Federal Revenue Court, so that there was inertia and there was confusion. So to me, I don't think creating a constitutional court in the language that I think in 2014 it was introduced, also in the language that it was introduced in 95, may solve the problem. It will only create one more judicial avenue that is not terribly needed, and that will be in contestation with other courts, just like the industrial court. I think it was wrong to have created the industrial court and to have made it part of the constitution of Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much. I think before you go, we have one more question from Chidi. Chidi, you're on. Can you please ask your question now to the Prof?
Thank you. The name is Chido Onuma. No, Chidi, this thing. Yeah. Thanks, Prof. Just wanted to go back to the question you raised about the fallacy of imposition of the 1979 Constitution.
Yes.
As one who took part in that, how much influence or interference, for want of a better word, the political class who were going to implement that Constitution, did they get to see any of what they were going to implement? That's on one hand. Then secondly, you raise the issue of power sharing and by extension the sharing of resources, which I think is at the heart of the whole debate about review of the Constitution. Why do you think there is a problem where you have a Constitution, for example, it not only legislates the states, but something as simple as local government? As far as I'm concerned, I think it puts an end to development. It means for states to even create their own local government, they have to go back, the Constitution would have to be amended. What's your take on that?
Oh, okay, well, I think that for the first question, I think in 79, really the one thing that you could say there was a heavy dose of imposition was the inaugural address of late General Murtala Muhammad, who clearly left the 49 wise men no choice but to propose a constitution that was not parliamentary in nature. And therefore, they took the brief and we shifted from parliamentary system to the presidential system. I think his address was very, very clear what they wanted. And I think there is a good case for having a central, an executive system, a president elected centrally, universally, and what have you. So this is one area I see what you can say was a preference of the military as to the direction of things. Of course, you remember when there was also this noise, the Sharia controversy and the boycott, and then of course, President Obasanjo then, or maybe the head of state, told them to take their hands off that, and it ended up, of course, not introducing the federal Sharia Court of Appeal, but introducing some kind of accommodation of the appellate powers of both the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court to accommodate judges that may come from, or appeals that may come from the Sharia Court of Appeal of the state. And then, of course, there are these clear fingers of the military on the 1979 Constitution, having regard to those decrees that were made part of the part of the Constitution, which was no decision of the Constitutional Assembly members, the NYSC, the NSO, the Land Use Decree, and maybe one other thing. So those are the areas that I can clearly see what you can attribute to the military. Having regard to the second question about a local government, I think again, if we are if we are able to create a consensus, the language of the 1999 Constitution with regard to how you create local government areas is such that it leaves matters to the states. Only that when they do that, it becomes incoherent, as the Supreme Court had decided, until the list that had been entrenched in the Constitution has been changed. So my view is that it is not that the Constitution is really legislating local government system as such, but the process of their creation and also the process of their final takeoff is one that requires national consensus. That is to say, the adoption of the proposal by the National Assembly. So you can relax that too, but I think it is something that we can. I don't know, we can live with, and by the way, governors don't want the powers that are now in the Constitution to be taken away from them, because they want local government to be given to them, and they deal with it as they wish. So it's not the issue of the choice between the federal strictures as against local flexibility. If you go local, it's going to be like another state electoral commission. So you know what happens with the state elections.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof. I think Dr. Sam Amadi is about to leave. So we take one more question from you, then we can go back. So we have the last question for you, Prof. That is Ejikeme Ozalo. Ejikeme, you're on now. Please go ahead. Make your question very snappy, then we can go back to Dr. Sam Amadi.
Yes, thank you very much. Please put me on the video. Thank you very much, Professor Yadudu. My question to you is, number one is, how would you like the restructuring to take place in Nigeria? And secondly, why did the Sovereign National Conference report delayed to be submitted to President Goodluck Jonathan, and then it runs near to election? There is a general feeling that you intentionally, delayed it or an obstacle to the submission. How would you plead, please? Thank you.
Okay, plead. Am I being charged before a court of law or what? No. Anyway, no, not a problem. Not a problem. My reaction, actually, your first question actually is, I have no particular view as to what restructuring should take place in Nigeria. All I am for is that I think Nigerians have a legitimate interest to discuss any issues, to agree to any sort of ideas, and including dismembering the country. But this is a big but, there is an existing legal order. It has to be done within that legal order. Otherwise, it is chaos. So I do not have a view as to how I want my state Kano to feature in a federation or confederation of regions or zones. But whenever you call me for a discussion, I'll come to it, and then we agree on issues. I would want it to be implemented one way or another. Now, I think you got your facts wrong about, first of all, the 2014 conference was not sovereign national conference. It didn't have sovereign power. It was a collection of individuals that President Jonathan himself put together, so it's not sovereign. It didn't have sovereign powers. Secondly, it was the president himself. The timing he chose was what dictated when and how the report went to him. In any event, if you got your facts correct, we finished the 2014 conference on August 14th, 2014, submitted the report to President Jonathan, I think on maybe September, first week of September of the same year. So he had the whole year to do what he wished with the report. He did nothing about it. So you cannot accuse, even put me on the dock. Again, maybe as being the cause for why the 2014 report was not adopted, because I didn't want it to happen. It was the president himself who chose the wrong time, and who, even when it was handed over to him on time, he did nothing to implement, not a single recommendation in it. So he just pushed the can to some other people. I think if anybody should take the blame, it should start with his regime. He set us up. We gave him a report on time. He did nothing about it, and the conference was not sovereign.
Okay, thank you very much. I think at this moment it will be fair to bring in Dr. Sama Amadi. Dr. Sama Amadi, can you please unmute, and can you have your view on what the Prof have said so far? Dr. Sama Amadi, can you please unmute?
Hello, are you hearing me now?
Oh yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry, I'm trying to dress up to go to studio, so I'm struggling. Okay, yeah, can you raise a question? Anyway, any question? Yeah?
No, based on what based on what Professor has
Professor Edu said. Okay, I have a couple of responses. First, I think Prof's argument about constitutional, my point about instability that comes from too much constitutional change. Prof will recall that those American amendments to the American Constitution took a lot of years and deliberations. Some of them lasted for about 20-something years. If you look at each of the amendments, they have to go through, because the politics around it, the debate, the politics to create a sense in which people will agree to something like civic rights. And some of them came after tumultuous political development, struggle for civic rights, the issues around the powers of the state, the First Amendment, Second Amendment, all of them had a history. It's not like in our own case where instead of 3-man or 13-member senators, they go to the states to have a public hearing, NGOs file papers, some people like us, interlopers, will go and speak, and they do a voting among themselves based on political convenience, block voting. We know how we got Section 121 reviewed. First, the legislature says no, they go around and talk to them, sign up. So my point is that you need some level of political stability. And then it requires taking out many things. If I was to revise the Constitution, remove 80%. For instance, about election. Some of the provisions we are making the constitution are things that you make by ordinary lawmaking process. Some of them are even supposed to be by substantive legislation, by agency rulemaking. Those like INEC, basic things about election. Then INEC will have the responsibility to, to rule out processes and so on and so forth. So my argument is keep it simple and stable. So the second point, so I'm not saying that it can't amend. I'm saying that historically the argument is published. There's a World Bank commission by some professors at Kennedy School and Oxford. They did the work on some constitution in the world and reviewed. An argument is that if you make constitutional provisions so easy to amend based on political outcome, then after every election, the winners will demand the right to amend the constitution to respond to their own. So, for example, there's a Green Party in Nigeria, it wins election, or it's a party of socioeconomic rights, it wins election. The first thing will be to make Section 4 constitutional. Then a party of, let's say, liberals and monetarists, neoliberals, who don't want fundamental rights because of the cost to the economy. With the win power, their tendency will be to create that. Second point that Prof raised about Section 10. Yes, the point I was making, Prof, is that Section 10 is seen to be nebulous. But my point is, when the Constitution says, if you look at the history and the debate around it, notorious famous case Mbakwe against Alhaji Ban at the Constitutional Conference that gave out 1979 Constitution, he discovered that there are two contending viewpoints. One is the viewpoint of what you can call the typical secularists, those who wanted the Nigerian state to simply not be multi-religious. Yes, we are a country of multi-religious, multiple religion, but also a country, the fundamental right in Section 36 says right to freedom of expression, religion, conscience, and opinion. So what that means really is that we don't have to, there are opinions are not religious, just like the case I gave the case of the atheist who says an atheist and speaks things that are maybe blasphemous or contradictory to religious faith. So I'm of the view, I'm not saying that you must interpret Section 10 to mean that Nigeria is a secular state. I'm saying that there is two opinions. One is the ones that says it's a multi-religious state. Therefore, once you don't make one religion, say Nigeria is Islamic or a Christian state, then even if you privilege one religion, even if you knock out other religion, then it's okay. I say no, let's move to a neutral state that does not in any way get so entangled. It's a big debate, but that's what I would like to see. Again, on this point also, if you look at like reference to maybe bigamy, there are one of the arguments the Professor Mabeze made, which I agree completely, is that morality has always been part of law. So, for example, all killing is a crime for both in the law, but also morally prohibited by Christianity and Islam. Nobody quarrels with it. But you can't say that killing is now a crime because of what Jehovah or Allah said. That's the point we're making. You can't make a criminal law in the name of religion. Even if you say it applies to only people from that, because people in that religion can also say they're no longer members. People can say they're no longer Christians or Muslims. It does not sit with the democratic notion of free expression, of the right for people to choose to believe or not believe. The Constitution, it says right to believe, right to not believe, proselytize, and say you don't want to believe again. So if you allow for blasphemy, offense of blasphemy, then that's a contradiction. That's the point I'm making. That we can be like Indonesia. Indonesia is over about 80 to 90% Muslims in population. When I spoke with Professor Wahid, President Wahid, once at Harvard, he gave the view that the leaders agreed not to have Sharia, public Sharia to have today. It's a big debate. It's touchy. We are a conservative people. We are traditional. And many people will fight again. But that's my sense of where we should be going to. The last point I would like to talk about, essentially, the question about Nigerians, whether the 1979 constitution is legitimate or not. I don't take the view that it's illegitimate. The constitution is actually requires that people, like the Greek city-state, people will gather and vote for it. It's a valid constitution, but it's a constitution that is full of military orientation and logic. For example, look at things like Chapter 5. We talk about Chapter 4, rights to this and right to that. If you look at those rights, they cut back. The way those rights are rendered useless by provisos are so typical of military. So it's a constitution that responds to the need more for stability, the need for order, rather than the need for freedom. And that's a debate we have to have. Where do we want to go to? Do we want to have more freedom? Or do we want focusing about, for example, the police can actually kill you, shoot somebody dead in order to protect a property. Most of the things we talk about, unfair policing and extrajudicial killing, are arguably justified under the Constitution. If you look at how useless the right to life and right to personal liberty is being rendered by those cutbacks and those caveats. So I would argue that, yes, I agree with Prof. that maybe it's not an illegitimate, it's not a religious constitution, no doubt about that, and is still legitimate, even though we, the Nigerian people, did not come and sit in one place and write it. But the question is, the choices the constitution made in the conflict between freedom and order, freedom and maybe national security, and how it defines national security. If you look at many provisions, for example, gender issue, women are talking about the right to have discrimination in terms of who can be a citizen, whether a spouse, whose spouse can be a citizen. There are many issues there. But I want to stay at the major issue, which is first, resolve the nationality question. Like Chido wrote, we're all Nigerians. The question is not about Biafra or no Biafra. Biafra was created by Nigerian failure, and that failure started in 1959 Constitution, what I call the original sin. Nigeria needed to choose to be a democratic secular state or chose to be a new feudal theocratic state. And that's why the outsized role of traditional rulers, especially the Sultan, the Emir, the Oni of all these people, religious leaders in democratic leadership in Nigeria is there. It's guaranteed by that choice to be a state that panders more to political, ethnic, and religious exceptionalism. We carve out, we create dispensations, privileges, and prerogatives to individuals based on their identities, ethnic, religious, or their pedigree, instead of creating a society of equality. So I'm unashamedly for democratic citizenship, and I'm an egalitarian. I want a state that can be constructed based on just simple link with a geopolitics, civic link, that's all. And so I'm unashamed to say that I think the Nigerian constitution is not a constitution that's good for a democratic modern state. It's a constitution that continuously creates the centripetal, or is this centrifugal now, forces for conflict all the time, because we're going to be struggling for who wins supremacy between ethnic and religious enclaves. I think that would be my response to Prof.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sam there. And I will want to bring Professor Yadudu back, but I want to remind us all that the conversation happening this evening centers on the coronavirus pandemic, good governance, restructuring, and the 1999 Constitution. Now, in view of this, bearing that in mind, how do we use this coronavirus pandemic period to advance good governance, to push for restructuring, in view of the 1999 Constitution, as has been alluded by Professor Yadudu, that everything we do, we must have to remember that it has to be done within the 1999 Constitution. Professor, over to you now. Can you please unmute?
This is supposed to be a conversation of three. I've been patient. I've been on for 40 minutes. I don't think it's wise or it's proper the way you are handling the conversation. Please.
So who is speaking?
Mahmoud, please.
Go on.
Oh, I think we should concede to others.
No, we were only giving you time because you said you just finished fasting, that you're about to leave. So Dr. Amadi is also leaving. So
I have nothing to add really. I'm happy that I've been part of the conversation, and perhaps I'm not in a position to talk intelligently about coronavirus and how really we can do things to it within the constitutional system. But thank you for the opportunity to be part of the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor. And on that note, we will be bringing the Dan. Can you confirm if Professor Chido Dinkalu is here?
I've not been. If Professor Dinkalu, please, if you are on, if you can raise up your hand, we can identify you. But while we wait for him to identify, can we allow the other speakers to respond to the points that have been made by Professor Yadudu and Dr. Amadi, please? We still have...
Where is Mahmoud, actually? Where is... I can't seem to see Mahmoud here. I think Mahmoud should still be here, please.
1 second.
I can't find him.
Is Professor Adenkalo still on the floor?
I think Mahmoud has left.
Oh, okay. So, sorry. On that note, Dan, are you confirming if Professor Adenkalo is here?
Well, if they are not here, there are people.
So on that note, I think, can I bring in? I think Chido Onuma wanted to say something before. Chido, you're on now. Please, can you unmute yourself?
Thank you very much. Yeah, my question is meant for Sam and Mahmoud. I don't know if Mahmoud is still with us. Sam and I share a lot in common in terms of the discussion about citizenship right and how that affects the whole national question. The idea is to create a state through social imagination. The question then is, how do we deal with this? How do we, Professor Yadudu has talked about whatever plans or decisions we want to make concerning restructuring Nigeria or bringing about change in Nigeria, that we have to do it within existing legal structure, which is problematic on its own. Sam Amadi and Mahmoud participated in the national conference. And for those who participated, I wanted to find out what their take would be in terms of how implementable the decisions of that conference. So if former President Jonathan knew that the outcome of that conference wasn't going to be, if somebody's in.
Oh, sorry, please go ahead. I think
so between Sam and Mahmoud, who took part in that conference, if the president who organized it knew that there was no way the decisions of that conference were going to be implemented, why did he take us through that road? Why did he bother taking us through 3 or 4 months of bringing people from across the country, spending so much? The fundamental question, we seem to all agree that Nigeria needs to be restructured. The question I think we should focus on is how do we go about it? And just to bring about the question of COVID-19, as Mahmoud mentioned in his introductory remark, COVID-19 has exposed the fragility of the Nigerian state and the fact that we need this change desperately now. But the question which we seem not to be addressing is, how do we go about it? There are those who agree that one end is to go through the legal process. I don't think that will work because it's a flawed process. Professor Yadudu, of course, alluded to the question of revolution. That's a possibility.
I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know what I can answer because I'm rushing out now.
Okay, please. Yes, you can.
Okay. So basically, I wasn't a delegate. I helped to nominate others who went. But let me say just what I think I know. Let's not forget that Jonathan was under too much pressure. Even the convocation of that conference was opposed, even the cabinet and politically, because of what it means.
Did he have to do it? He
probably did it. Well, in a way, he typical of most Jonathan did some kind of compromise, balance between 2 opposing forces. He did it. Now, when the result came out, I know that it was compiled and taken to Secretariat, AGF, and there were, of course, groups that worked and then white paper. But the problem was that at that point, many of the leaders had kind of delegitimized. APC walked away, I think, bottom line, Jonathan lacked the political will at the last meeting. There are 3 levels of enforcement, like what Mahmoud said. There are those that are executive orders, executive processes. They talk about reform of government, good governance, this cost of governance, even Orosanya. There are those that required legislative reform, and those that public sector-wide reform. Now, the critical issues are the ones on legislative reform, which required National Assembly. At the end of the day, the president did not take the report to the board. But the time he finally was about leaving, he forwarded the report to the National Assembly, and of course, there was neither political will nor even the space to do it. So at that point, they said, you just take a note and say, this is the report submitted to the National Assembly. It wasn't like I'm proposing this legislation, executive legislation to do this. I'm back to Mahmoud's, Professor Dudu's argument. It's true that if you say we should go to the legislative process, the process of National Assembly, it's a straitjacket. If you go there, like I said, there is a majoritarian trump against you who don't want the reform because they either think it's something else. What else can we do? My view is threefold. Is an advocacy. Nigeria is almost a failing state. The urgency of that failure can create a political consensus around saving the republic by doing a few things right. Second is a view I take that some state governors or some people who come to power and executive avoiders of the law, they start acting in their own interpretation of that constitution and then pushed by their aggressive, subversive, quote unquote, executive action, they will now push the Supreme Court to what Professor Dudu said, to now use judicial statesmanship to expand and transform the Constitution. That the text of the Constitution will be highly different from what the Constitution is. That's what happened in the US. The issues around Marbury and the Marbury case, the issues around slavery, segregation, most of those cases were cases that judicial actors changed the Constitution, put interpretation that's not the Constitution. People like Professor Larry Tribe have argued in the book called The Living Constitution that the American Constitution is not what we think it is. There's nowhere the right of blacks are in that we the people. But the judges will change it. So if you say we must go through the narrow part of the National Assembly where there's likely going to be a blockade, then 2 options will be political action to push for political consensus around maybe a national conference of a sort, or some administrative action by governors who are daring and to the state assemblies to exercise authority contrary to what we think is the constitutional text. And they go to court. The Supreme Court will now probably, based on saving the republic, agree with them and expand the constitution. Unfortunately, daylight secession, insurgencies, people who pull away, people who threaten the state. So for me, it's in the interest of Nigeria's state security to agree to look at the constitution in a way to deal with these contradictions. I think I will drop it there so that I catch my interview. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So thank you very much, Dr. Amadi there, and I know you'll be taking your leave now. On that note, I will be bringing in Otumba Olabide. I mean, he's been raising up his hand for a while now. Otumba, please, can you unmute yourself and make your contribution?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. My own take, like every other week when we have this conference or meeting, is just to speak on behalf of the ordinary people of Nigeria. Here we have listened to all the legal minds, professors, and so on and so forth. The thing is, what were they thinking when the military asked them to come up or put constitution, laws, rules, regulations together? Like one of the professors said, I think Professor Sam or whatever, said, well, he is for a good governance. But we all now know that all the experience we have so far, the last almost 60 years, there has not been good governance. Now we're now trying to come out of this contraction, this problem of do we know what we are doing? And we now see that there are so many stumbling blocks to even start to talk about restructuring. And I think, again, this is a failure on part of all the highly educated, learned people in the country who probably thinking that the more big English they put in the constitution, the more big English they can talk in different forum and fora, will solve problem. It is not, because like I said, all the constitution of this world has something to do with good governance of the people. But we don't have that in Nigeria. So the question is, what are they doing about it to minimize, to reduce this unnecessary, difficult, big grammar, constitutions, terms, technologies, and so on that other people do not have anything to benefit from it? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And on that note, I will be bringing in Toks Ekukina, please. You're on.
Good evening, everybody. I've been listening very, very avidly to what's been going on. Unfortunately, both Professor Anwalu and Dr. Sam have left. I would have had questions for both of them. I am also a legal practitioner. I was called to the bar 45 years ago, so I think I'm senior to both of them. I also served as a legal advisor to a president, so I know how the system works. And I would have told Professor Anwalu that he does bear some kind of collective vicarious liability for the 1999 Constitution. That's the way it works. He alluded to that to say that the military told them the direction that they wanted to go. So the fact that he was part of that process does not absolve him from responsibility for the process, no matter what his thinking may now be. That being the case, I also agree with Professor Sam that we need to look at the civic rights of the people. That is the most important part of the democratic process. The constitution that we have at the moment is not a constitution of the people. I disagree with Professor Anwalu as far as that is concerned, because that constitution was given to us as a schedule to a military decree. It should have been brought back to the people for ratification, and it was never done. Because the military always want to exert power and control. It's not about the wishes of the people, it's about controlling the people. That's what military people do. And that is why we are stuck with the situation that we are in at the moment. I will agree, however, that the most peaceful way of amending the constitution, and as far as I'm concerned, we need a total rewrite, not amendments, we need a total rewrite of a constitution that is approved by the people for the people. So we need a national conference, we need a complete constitutional redrafting committee, we need a political activity or a political action plan that will ensure that we bring people into government who are committed to restructuring. You asked about the benefits of this COVID period in the fight towards restructuring, and I would say that the benefit is that it has given us scope to think. We've seen, in terms of what COVID has done to us in this country, where our faults are. We have no healthcare system to speak of. That is a disaster in itself. And there's so many other things that we could be looking at that we should have done that we haven't done. And COVID has exposed that. COVID has exposed even more than we knew our dependence on monoculture, the diversification of our economy. We're in dire straits. Nigeria is about to become bankrupt. Let's put it in black and white. We're about to become bankrupt, and we're still asking to borrow money. I hope they don't give us, because maybe now we'll start seeing some sense. I am a child of the diaspora, original child of the diaspora. I was born before Nigeria became independent. So I have no passionate sentiments about the way Nigeria is. I see it the way it is, and I will say it the way it is. We need to start telling ourselves the truth. I loved the semantics of Professor Anwalu. As a lawyer myself, I loved it because I could see where he was going, see what he was not saying, and I could see where he was, what he didn't want to say. I could see that. That was clear. There will still be people in this country who will emotionally resist restructuring, and that's what we need to fight. We need to understand that this country is divided along so many different lines, ethnic and religious, and also power. That is a major problem that we have. And we need to start looking at ways and action plans to find out how we are going to put into place steps to combat those. If we're going to go through the constitutional route, as Professor Anwalu suggested, then we need 24 states of the Federation to sign up to restructuring, plus the FTC. That's what's in the Constitution that we operate today. How are we going to do that? Are we going to build the necessary alliances across all the various ethnic regions and geopolitical regions? I've been in the US 3 or 4 times last year talking about restructuring for Nigeria, and I know what I hear. But unfortunately, we have leaders that do not listen because they are not interested. It doesn't suit them to restructure Nigeria. As long as they can still put people under control and make them do what they want to do by buying votes and snacking ballot boxes and the rest of it, they're not going to be interested. And I said to somebody yesterday in an interview, we should not expect restructuring in this government. It's not going to happen. But we need to be looking forwards now, which is why this COVID period has given us the scope to think and to reassess and re-evaluate exactly where we are in this country and where we need to go. So we need to be looking at, if you want to do revolution, fine, but be prepared for a bloody civil war. And I don't think anybody wants that. That is the crux of the matter. I've been through it. I know what it's like. Nobody wants a war in this country anymore. But if you want to go through the supposedly democratic constitutional route, then you actually need to be building those alliances and working underneath the radar to bring people into your fold that will do what needs to be done. That's my take. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And what needs to be done? 24 states, as you rightly stated. I mean, that's basically a Herculean task.
It's not. It's not. Because you have the whole of the East, which is 7 states. You have the whole of the South, which is 6 states. You have the Middle Belt. So don't be fooled by the Hausa Fulani stereotype. There is a big population in the Middle Belt that are prepared to fight for their freedom, no longer to be servants to the Fulani hegemony. They will vote for you if you pick up yourselves and start to work. You will also get some states in the north. I can tell you which states they are, but I won't tell you on this webinar because that's what we're doing. But you will, or you can, with a lot of work and a lot of effort and talking to the right people and putting the right things in place, you can get those 24 states. It's a question of, are we prepared to put in the work that it entails?
Okay.
That is the bottom line. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And I will be bringing in Collins Opara now to have your submission. Collins, you're on. Can you unmute yourself? Collins, can you unmute yourself?
Oh, okay. I have.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead. Can you hear me now, Tochukwu?
Can you make it snappy, please? Go ahead.
Okay, good. Okay, fine. I've listened to what Tok said. I think I'm not going to repeat some of the things that she has said, but I want to. I was a bit confused when Dr. Sam was talking about how to craftily produce something like an executive order that will sound like a way to have a different wording for the Constitution. And it really didn't sound, in fact, from what Tokes explained throughout, he actually captured my full mind. It didn't sound like that is something that can be possible. Although a lot of people will look at it from the last EO that was given concerning the state legislatures, but I don't think it will. And I think I'm beginning to see reasons in what Tokes is saying that on the ground it's going to be difficult. It's either we take it as a revolution, or we begin to look at these alliances, and also, like she said, that some of the states, northern states, because if some of them begin to see that it will benefit them, we begin to craftily make them understand that it will it will work. I'm going to align with that and leave some of the things that I actually wanted to say that would have been repetition for that. The other thing I would also want to re-emphasize, which has been said here, is that I totally disagree with Professor Yadudu's approach to amend the constitution. If he's saying that we need to run it within the present order that we have, it means that we're not ever going to achieve that retooling of the country. It's not going to happen because there's a particular volume of a part of the state that will always want it not done, because we've seen where the state is run by a not by productivity or assets or provisions or jobs or other things are not given by productivity. Up till now, Nigeria is still saying that there are educationally less privileged set of people. So it doesn't mean that in another 100 years, the country will continue to wait for those who have decided not to be privileged, or those who have decided not to move themselves up. So we'll continue to run a polity, a system that can't work. So I'll end by saying that if we re-emphasize that being a Nigerian has to be a civic connection. It doesn't have to be by religion. I'm not Nigeria first. This is a fact. None of us are Nigerians first. We actually came from somewhere. But we are Nigerians because we have decided to come together to build an entity. So if we're going to be doing that, we need to also tell ourselves that there is a reason for us to want to die for the entity that we have come together to be part of. So the system needs to be remodeled to be able to make everyone believe in something, believe in that name and believe in that system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think the last person here is Ejikeme Ozalo. Please, can you unmute and make a contribution? Then afterwards, the moderator, Daniel Elomba, can you make your own input, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Please reach me on the video as well. Thank you.
Quickly. Go ahead.
Yes, after listening to Barrister Mahmudu, which is no more here now, and also Dr. Sam Amadi and Professor Yadudu, you see, to start with, the COVID-19, as we all know, has exposed Nigeria as a failed state, as a failed country, whereby there is no hospital infrastructure, no good health infrastructure for the citizens of the country. And there is nothing under this constitution, that can remedy that. That is a very, very appalling fact for a country called Nigeria. And even about COVID-19 or these calamities was not in the constitution, how to manage it, So that's why the 1991 constitution needs to be amended. And we don't need to go all this way of getting 24 states, because everybody's agitating for restructuring. We're supposed to, by public opinion, restructure Nigeria. It's because it's a favoring some states or some people. That's why they are not interested, and unfortunately, that we have 2% of the citizens of Nigeria, the Fulani oligarchy, ruling the country, and they are making it impossible for the rest of 98 people to be able to restructure Nigeria, which we will not allow to happen.
Can I ask you? Is any state in Nigeria can we actually point to any state in Nigeria that is actually benefiting aside the elite? Can we?
Yes, there are. There are, because if you follow what is happening, Maziz, let me put this straight. During this COVID-19 issue, which is ongoing, see the model of distribution of benefits or so-called food restructuring or food division, and the money given when you look at the northern people, they were being given rice, full bag of rice, 40,000 naira or whatever.
Can we actually classify someone who is on benefit as being as enjoying?
No, when I say benefit, it's not benefit for the individual, it's benefit for a particular set of people. Please see it that way. Because the northern people were well off in that sense by the provision made to them. 40,000 naira, bags of rice. We are out in the east or the south or whatever. They were giving a small 5,000 naira or whatever, and giving a very all of us saw it in the social media, so it's there and it's not fake news, But please let me carry on. The states of the northern Nigeria are really profiting in this present situation because they are really benefiting. Now, the oil blocks are majority of the northern people. How can you pass a pipeline from the south to have a refinery in Kaduna and that it doesn't work? And now oil gas is going there. All restructuring is from the railway restructuring is only happening now, so far in the north. Please give me some minutes because I want to touch on the issues of Dr. Sam Amadi, which is right.
We must round up in the next 2 minutes. And,
very good. I just a minute I have.
So,
now Dr. Amadi said about the productive crisis we have in Nigeria, which is also one of the failures of 1999 Constitution. He rightly made it so. And Mr. Moderator and the host, I want people to look into this and touch on it. We shouldn't be hiding away from the facts. I don't like this kind of sugar coating we are trying to give things. Let's call a spade and not an instrument of object of manual labor. We are suffering for these issues going in Nigeria. Nigeria is a failed state. We don't have an active president that come out and be active and take the bull by the horn. He have never visited anybody. He did not say anything about this COVID-19. He always been forced to speak. What kind of a president is that? What kind of a nation are we? I will rest my case. Please, let's have resolution to these Zoom conferences and put it out there that we want restructuring and we want Nigeria to be a state. We are failing. The lady barrister said that Nigeria is nearly going bankrupt, and it's true. Why should we continue to borrow from Chinese and some of the contracts are written in Chinese language and we have government signing on it? What kind of government is that? You sign on Chinese language that you don't know what it is. Why would you not read it and sign in English, read the dotted line? And that's why one day Chinese will own up all the infrastructures in Nigeria, like it is happening in Zambia.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Daniel Lumba, over to you now. Thank you.
If I can allow BSU, you have raised up his hand to quickly 30 seconds make his point, please. It'll be 30 seconds. We are running.
No problem. That's all right by me. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
You see, I think we must begin to ask the question of how than the why. Most of the speakers we bring in have often addressed the question of why. We should begin to look at the how. The Sam Amadi has been able to give us the crisis of the federation, in which he broke it down to about 3 areas. And specifically, just because I have a very few time to speak, I'm just asking the question of how. How do we begin to, bring the discourse into more practical solutions in order to achieve restructuring? If care is not taken, we may be discussing the why till the next 10, 15 years. So I think that is one of the things I think we should begin to look at. Practical steps towards achieving restructuring and how to bring them to bear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Daniel Lumba, over to you.
Okay, we thank everyone that has attended to this conference, and particularly our speakers, Professor Yadudu, Dr. Amadi, and Barrister Abdul. We thank them, especially those who have touched on areas where we have been kind of confused all along. to know exactly what happened with the 1999 Constitution. The conversation continues. I don't have much to ask now because the main people who will take the main question, although they informed us beforehand that they are very engaged, but because they have given their word to be here tonight, that they will still attend, even if it's just for a brief period. So we thank them very much, and our conversation will continue next week.
Thank you all. Thank you once more for joining us. As usual, thank you for keeping faith with us, and thank you for being part of this conversation. And the conversation continues. We must bequeath our children a better society than we met it. Everyone agrees that the Nigerian state as we know it today is not working. We must all put our hands together to see what we can do to make it work. Thank you once more and have a wonderful evening. I remain Mazezoke. Bye-bye.